Good morning, students. Let us resume our lecture on Eliza Haywood's Phantomina. It will be the last part that I will discuss on. In our previous lectures, we have found that there was a lady and she assumed different roles to be, say for example, there was Phantomina, there was Celia, there was Widow Bloomer, and now at the last part we have found that she was assuming the role of incognita. That means so that her identity will not be disclosed to Beauplessis. And in my last lecture we have actually found that there was a kind of a physical association or physical relationship was going on between Beauplessis and the incognita, and it was continuing. So let me resume from the section where we have ended in our last lecture. The paragraph begins with this particular line: the hours of repose being arrived. So you see, it is the particular moment, it is the particular situation where you can find that the physical consummation has already been done, and now the hours of repose being arrived, and he begged she would retire to her chamber, to which she consented, but obliged him to go to bed first. So there is another particular implication, which he did not much oppose, because he supposed she would not lie in her mask. So there is there is a reference to physical consummation again. And doubted not but the morning's dawn would bring the wished discovery. And what is the discovery you can identify? It is actually referring to the discovery of the face, or maybe the identity of this lady. The two imagined servants ushered him to his new lodging, where he lay some moments in all the perplexity imaginable at the oddness of this adventure, because prior to this particular situation, Beauplessis never expected or experienced such a kind of an adventure in life, where he had been summoned by a lady, and ultimately throughout the encounter you see that the lady remains within veil. So, but she suffered not these cogitations or contemplations or thought to be of any long continuance. She came, but came in the dark. That is the problem, you see. That ultimately she came there is a possibility of physical consummation, obviously. But ultimately when she came, you will find that it was complete darkness. So this particular darkness is visible, that is the visible darkness, and at the same time the darkness is being thrown on the identity of that particular lady, which being no more than he expected by the former part of her proceedings, he said nothing of, but as much satisfaction as he found in her embraces. So there is the particular direct references of the physical consummation. Nothing ever longed for the approach of day with more impatience than he did. That means so long he was assimilated with this lady, ultimately the particular kind of curiosity was gradually becoming more powerful in him. So nothing ever longed for the approach of day with more impatience than he did. At last it came, but how great was his disappointment. That means the morning comes, but with a kind of disappointment, when by the noises he heard in the street, that means it actually indicates the morning, the hurry of the coaches and the cries of penny merchants, that means the street merchants selling cheap goods, he was convinced it was night. Okay, nowhere but with him. Why? Because you will find he was still in the same darkness as before. For she had taken care to blind the windows in such a manner that not the least chink was left to let in day. So ultimately you will find it was properly curtained, and it actually objected from the entry of light from outside. He complained of her behavior in terms that she would not have been able to resist yielding to. If she had not been certain, it would have been the ruin of her passion. She therefore answered him only as she had done before. and getting out of the bed from him, flew out of the room with too much swiftness for him to have overtaken her if he had attempted it. That means she, the lady, you'll see the incognita, she was very, she was ultimately, you will find that she was very ready. She was actually ready for regarding the keeping of her disposition a secret. So she therefore answered him only as he had done before, and getting out of the bed from him, flew out of the room with too much swiftness for him to have overtaken her, if he had attempted it. The moment she left him, the two attendants entered the chamber, plucking down the implements which had screened him from the knowledge of that which he so much desired to find out, restored his eyes once more to day. That means the curtain had been kept aside, and ultimately the light of day, or light of the day, light of the morning, it entered in the room. They attended to assist him in dressing, brought him tea, and by their obsequiousness, that is the efforts to agree with somebody, let him see there was but one thing which the mistress of them would not gladly oblige him in. He was so much out of humor. So you will find that somehow Plessy was so much disappointed, so much out of humor. However, at the disappointment of this curiosity, that he resolved never to make a second visit. So he was out of his humor, and he resolved that never to make a second visit. Finding her in an outer room, he made no scruple of expressing the sense he had of the little trust she reposed in him, and at last plainly told her he couldn't submit to receive obligations from a lady who thought him incapable of keeping a secret. So ultimately, now you will find that the anger, to some extent, anger, frustration, disappointment, it actually led Beauplessis to speak in this particular way. He says that he could not submit to receive obligations from a lady who thought him incapable of keeping a secret, which she made no difficulty of letting her servants into. He resented. He once more entreated. He said all the man could do to prevail on her to unfold the mystery of the identity, the mystery of exposing her real identity, her face, and so. But all his adjurations or entreaties were fruitless. Okay, it doesn't come to the fore, and he went out of the house determined never to re-enter it, till she should pay the price of his company with the discovery of her face and circumstances. She suffered him to go with this resolution, and doubted not but he would recede from it, when he reflected on the happy moments they had passed together. But if he did not, she comforted herself with the design of forming some other stratagem. So now the lady thinks that somehow the happy moments of their physical union, it actually make Beauplessis to return to this particular place once again. But if not, the lady considers that she will again, create or maybe make another kind of a stratagem with which to impose on him a fourth time. She kept the house and her gentleman equipage for about a fortnight, in which time she continued to write to him as Phantomina, as Widow Bloomer, and received the visits he sometimes made to each. So sometimes she becomes Phantomina, sometimes Widow Bloomer, and received the visits he sometimes made to each. But his behavior to both was grown so cold. That means the behavior to Phantomina, behavior to Widow Bloomer, it gradually becomes cold, that she began to grow as wary of receiving his now insipid caress as he was of offering them. So that was the fundamental question. That was a kind of a comment that Eliza Haywood is making continuously throughout the text on the typical male temperament, you see. So behavior to both was grown cold, so cold that she began to grow as wary of receiving his now insipid caress as he was offering them. She was beginning to think in what manner she should draw up these two characters. Two characters means Phantomina and Widow Bloomer. When the sudden arrival, now the problem arises actually. Throughout the text we will never find any particular reference to her mother. And ultimately we have been informed that there was an aunt, and the aunt was least, least thoughtful or least carey regarding the presence of this lady. Now the mother arrives, you see. The sudden arrival of her mother, who had been sometime in a foreign country, obliged her to put an immediate stop to the course of her whimsical adventures. That means the adventures regarding the physical consummation and the love that they were making. So it actually being stopped. That lady, who was severely virtuous, did not approve of many things she had been told of the conduct of her daughter. That means the conduct of the daughter, that is the lady, it had already been spreaded throughout the country, and somehow you will find that this particular intimation or information have been sent to the mother, and the mother was, you see, that she was extremely virtuous, severely virtuous. She was not in a particular position to approve of many things she had been told of the conduct of her daughter. And though it was not in the power of any person in the world to inform her of the truth of what she had been guilty of, so it is not possible so that the particular kind of a guilt can be exposed in the face of the mother. Yet she heard enough to make her keep her afterwards in restraint. But ultimately the news of the exploits or something like that, it actually made the mother to think about the restrainment, little agreeable to her humor and liberties to which she had been accustomed. But this confinement, you see, was not the greatest part of the trouble of this now afflicted lady. So ultimately Elizabeth is informing, she's indicating that this confinement is not the ultimate thing that we have to think about the lady. She found the consequences of her amorous follies, you see, the term amorous follies is being pointed out, would be, without almost a miracle, impossible to be concealed. Why? What is the miracle? She was with child. So this pregnancy, this unfortunate pregnancy, ultimately, it comes to the forefront. And though she would easily have found means to have screened even this from the knowledge of the world, had she been at liberty to have acted with the same unquestionable authority over herself as she did before the coming of her mother, yet now all her invention was at a loss. That means it might be possible that the patterns of abortion may be possible, and it might be possible that in the previous extent she had done that. But now it was completely impossible just because the mother was present with her. So yet now all her invention was at a loss for a stratagem to impose on a woman of her pretension or penetrations. By eating little, lessing prodigious trait and the advantage of great hoop petticoat, however, so she was also trying to keep it hidden from her mother's eye, and that's why she was eating less, lessing prodigious trait and advantage of a great hoop petticoat, however, her bigness, that was the pregnancy, actually advanced pregnancy, and the advantage of the great hoop, however, her bigness was not taken notice of. And perhaps she would not have been suspected till the time of her going into the country, where her mother designed to send her, and from whence she intended to make her escape to some place where she might be delivered with secrecy. So the mother was also thinking about transporting her daughter into another place, if the time of it had not happened much sooner than she expected. A ball being at court, the good old lady was willing she should partake of the diversion of it as a farewell to the town. So there was a ball dance, a dance party has been thrown, and the mother actually thought, the mother was persuading the lady to take part in it, as it was a kind of a farewell to the town or farewell party. It was there she was seized with those pangs, the pains, which none in her condition are exempt from. So it is the labor pain that actually being pointed out. She could not conceal the sudden rack, that is the sudden loosely jolt, which all at once invaded her, or had her tongue been mute, her wildly rolling eyes, the distortion of her feature, and the convulsions which shook her whole frame, in spite of her, would have revealed she labored under some terrible shock of nature. So everywhere you will find that these are the indications that actually pointed towards the particular condition she was in. She was in labor, and it was a labor pain that she was feeling at this moment. Everybody was surprised, everybody was concerned but few guessed at the occasion. They were surprised, they were concerned, but ultimately the occasion, what is the occasion? It cannot be identified by anybody. Her mother grieved beyond expression, doubted not, but she was struck with the hand of death, and ordered her to be carried home in a chair, while herself followed in another. A physician was immediately sent for. The doctor comes. But he, presently perceiving what was her distemper, called the old lady aside, that is the mother aside, and told her it was not a doctor of his sex, that is, it is not a male doctor that will do to anything to her, but one of her own, that is the lady doctor, her daughter stood in need of. Never was astonishment and horror greater than that which seized the soul of this afflicted parent at these words. So somehow it is something horrific or terrible that the mother could perceive at this moment or hear at this moment. She could not for a time believe the truth of what she heard. But he, insisting on it and conjuring her to send for a midwife, she was at length convinced of it. That means the lady has been summoned. The midwife has been summoned. All the pity and tenderness she had been for some moment before possessed of now vanished. So the pity and tenderness regarding her daughter, now when the situation, when the information has been gathered that the lady is in labor pain, it actually vanished from her and was succeeded by an adequate shame, indignation. She flew to the bed where her daughter was lying and telling her what she had been informed of and which she was now far from doubting. That means now she is actually stating the information that actually reached her. And now she is stating that I have heard of all these things, you see, but I never actually thought about them, that these were correct, these were true. But now I can identify that it is true, and it is the shameful activities that you were in. And telling her what she had been informed of, and which she was now far from doubting, commanded her to reveal the name of the person whose insinuations had drawn her to this dishonor. That means who is the actual father of this child. It was a great while before she could be brought to confess anything, and much longer before she could be prevailed on to name the man whom she so fatally had loved. But the wrath of nature growing more fierce, that means she was not willing to disclose the name. But the wrath of nature growing more fierce, and the enraged old lady protesting to help should be afforded her while she persisted in her obstinacy. She, with great difficulty and hesitation in her speech, at last pronounced the name of Beauplaisir. She had no sooner satisfied her weeping mother than the sorrowful lady sent messengers at the same time for a midwife. That means the name has been revealed, and the lady, that is the mother, sent for the midwife, and for the gentleman also the messenger has been sent to the gentleman who had occasioned the others being wanted. He happened by accident to be at home, that is Beauplaisir, and immediately obeyed the summons, though prodigiously surprised what business a lady, so much a stranger to him, could have to impart. So he cannot identify that a lady from that particular house, why does he or why is she summoning me? What is the reason behind that? He cannot identify. But how much greater was his amazement when, taking him into her closet, she there acquainted him with her daughter's misfortune, of the discovery she had made, and how far he was concerned in it. So Beauplaisir cannot identify what is happening, because Beauplaisir could never think that he actually kept relationships with this lady. All the idea one can form of wild astonishment was mean to what he felt. He assured the lady, he assured her, that the young lady, her daughter, was a person whom he had never, more than at a distance, admired. So there was no possibility of any kind of sexual relationship with her. That he had indeed spoke to her in public company, yes, but that he never had a thought which intended to her dishonor. His denials, if possible, added to the indignation she was before inflamed with. The mother, she was too much inflamed with that particular kind of a denial. She had no longer patience, and carrying him into the chamber where she was just delivered of a fine girl, cried out, I will not be imposed on. The truth by one of you shall be revealed. Beauplessis, being brought to the bedside, was beginning to address himself to the lady in it. Now there was a direct confrontation, direct interaction between these two. To beg she would clear the mistake her mother was involved in. So Beauplessis was pleading the lady that please tell your mother that I was not responsible, I am not responsible for such a kind of shame and indignation you were in. When she, covering herself with the clothes and ready to die a second time with the inward agitation of her soul, shrieked out, "Oh, I am undone. I cannot live and bear this shame." But the old lady, believing that now or never was the time to dive into the bottom of this mystery, forcing her to rear her head. Now, the lady, that is the mother, she is persuading the young lady to say everything, you see, to confess everything. So the lady, believing that now or never was the time to dive into the bottom of this mystery, forcing her to rear her head, told her she should not hope to escape the scrutiny of a parent she had dishonored in such a manner, and pointing to Beauplessis, "Is this the gentleman," said she, "to whom you owe your ruin? Or have you deceived me by a fictitious tale?" "Oh no," resumed the trembling creature, "he is indeed the innocent cause of my undoing." That means now the lady, the young lady, she says that he is the innocent cause of my undoing. That means he is responsible for this, but he did it unwillingly, unknowingly. Okay? "Promise me your pardon," continued she. "I will relate the means." Here she ceased, expecting what she would reply, which on hearing Beauplessis cry out, "What mean you, madam? I, your undoing, who never harbored the least design on you in my life." She did in these words, "Though the injury you have done your family," said she, "is of a nature which cannot justly hope forgiveness, yet be assured I shall much sooner excuse you when satisfied with the truth, than while I am kept in a suspense, if possible, as vexatious as the crime, that is the reverie itself, is to me." Encouraged by this, she related the whole truth, the complete, the complete truth that she was in. And it is difficult to determine if Beauplessis or the lady were most surprised at what they heard. That means the truth, when it was revealed, who is more surprised? The lady, that is the mother of this woman, or maybe Beauplessis? Both were surprised by hearing to this. "Oh, what I have done," Beauplessis was thinking at this moment. That he should have been blinded so often by her artifices, or she, that so young a creature should have the skill to make use of them. Everything was surprising. Both sat for some time in a profound reverie, that is the reverie that I have mentioned just now, till at length she broke in first in these words. She said, "Pardon, sir, the trouble I have given you. I must confess it was with a design to oblige you to repair the supposed injury you had done this unfortunate girl by marrying her. But now I know not what to say." That means if you have done it willingly, then I would obviously suggest the marriage or something like that. But now I have heard that you have not done it willingly. That's why I have to make you free from such kind of obligations. So that was the fundamental question. I will come to that after ending this particular text. "The blame is wholly hers." That is the line. "The blame is wholly hers. And I have nothing to request further of you." Okay, then that you will not divulge the distracted folly she has been guilty of. He answered her in terms perfectly polite, but made no offer of that which perhaps she expected, though could not, now informed of her daughter's proceedings, demand. He assured her, however, that if she would commit the newborn lady to his care, he would discharge it faithfully. But neither of them would consent to that, and he took his leave full of cogitations or contemplations, more confused than ever he had known in his whole life. He continued to visit there, to inquire after her health every day, But the old lady, perceiving there was nothing likely to ensue from these civilities, but perhaps a renewing of the crime, she entreated him to refrain, and as soon as the daughter was in a condition, sent her to a monastery in France. That was the punishment she was given. The abbess of which had been her particular friend. And thus ended an intrigue which, considering the time it lasted, was as full of variety as any, perhaps, that many ages had produced. So that was the text, you see. Ultimately, throughout the discussions that I have made in these 5 or 6 long lectures, you see, that I have pointed out regarding the final or the very important focus of this particular text. What is at the pivotal point at this moment? You will find that somehow Eliza Haywood, or what is the function of this particular text? What is the primary focus of this particular text? As I mentioned earlier also, that it is a kind of, you see, a kind of a differentiation is being made on the basis of male sexuality and female sexuality, obviously, and I have already pointed them out in the from the sections of the texts, probably the lines that I have mentioned, and how Eliza Haywood is producing such kind of differentiations, the male temperament to the sexual implications and the female temperament altogether. But so far as the end of this particular text is concerned, you see, that you will find that what actually happened to the lady and what actually happened to Beauplessis. You will find that somehow whenever it has been heard by the lady, that is the mother of the lady, young lady, you have found that the lady, that is the mother, she to some extent freed Beauplessis from such kind of charges, such kind of obligatory or obligations and so. Why? Because she found that that Beauplessis never did it willingly to some extent. But the question certainly arises, what does the term willingness is pointing out here? Does it signify that the male figure, that is Beauplessis, who is representing a particular class, a particular pattern in the society, if he commits such kinds of, sexual relations and so, is it quite logical, or is it quite a kind of a activity that have to be freed from any kind of legal or that can be made free from any kind of legal accusations or so? Actually, it is the way of the world, you see. That means that the way that have been pointed out here, it is the particular kind of a world that have been created by Eliza Haywood here. It is a kind of a world that is represented by the persons, okay, in the texts, not only in this particular text, that is Phantomina. Rather, you will find the same kind of implications have been made in the writings written during these periods. This is the Beauplessis is a representative figure, obviously. He is a representative man, and you will find that Beauplessis is somehow representing a particular class, and the way he has been treated by that particular society, okay, and that societal representations have been made on the basis of the mother here, okay, you will find that it is obviously patriarchal. The typical form of patriarchy actually leaves the persons from any kind of criminal charge or these kinds of things. He actually being freed from the obligatory perspectives, you see. But what happened to the lady? That is the lady, the young lady, or Phantomina rather, or maybe Celia, or Widow Bloomer, or maybe we can utter the name of Incognita. And you will find certainly that she was punished. She was being sent to a monastery at France or in France. So that was a kind of a punishment a lady must have to be given in this particular society. So though you will find that somehow Eliza Haywood in this particular text, she is providing us with alternative form of sexuality, alternative form of behavior and temperament the females should follow. But ultimately at the end of the text, we will find that somehow some moralistic undertones have been given. What kind of morality? The morality a typical patriarchal society that can expect you from it. You see? And that's why a punishment must have to be given. Why? Because Eliza Haywood had to think about the society she was in. In my discussion the introductory part, you see, that I have discussed that Eliza Haywood was completely, to some extent, she was attacked by the typical, the superior kind of patriarchy or patriarchal figures. Okay, the male writers, the critics, you see. And somehow Eliza Haywood had to think about them in her own lifetime. So that's why whenever you see that ultimately, just like you will find that Philomena has been treated, the Philomena's reactions, and somehow she's proposing some kind of alternative forms of sexuality, alternative forms of, say, thinking or desires or anything, etc., etc., but ultimately we'll find at the end of this text, she had to be punished. Why? Because it was patriarchy that is doing so. And it was actually forcing Eliza Haywood to give Philomena such kind of punishment to be sent in monastery. Another thing that is fundamentally I have to think here, that it has been said that in France, or in the monastery in France, Philomena was being sent. Is it a kind of a question that Eliza Haywood is asking regarding the ladies in the monastery? Okay, it is not, I'm not talking about Philomena, I'm not speaking about Philomena, but I'm speaking about the nuns and other figures who have been found in the monasteries. So what would be their past? What would be their history? Is it something referring to that? Is it a kind of a question that is being made by Eliza Haywood regarding their identity, regarding their past, regarding their history? Or maybe this is a kind of, you see, that, that in the monasteries you will find the figures who have been treated with utmost devotion, which you will treat them, and ultimately they have been treated with utmost devotion and piousness, or maybe anything, respect and awe or anything else, because they have been directly being associated with God and the Son of God and Trinity, you see. But now you are thinking, or you have to think in a different way. Now we have traced that here is a nun in a monastery who had the long past regarding this and this and this. So is it a kind of a question that Eliza Haywood is trying to propagate here? These are the questions that we have to answer. These are the questions that we have to think. So somehow the primary concern of this particular text that we have to discuss, that we have to take a look at, and these are, sexuality, as I mentioned just now. These are referring to the typical form of the society that it portrays. Okay, the different roles of disguises, what Philomena is assuming at this moment, the different kinds of disguises, the 4 roles that she is playing, the implications of the letters, you see, and what happened to her, and how Eliza Haywood is treating female sexuality and male sexuality at a par. So these are the questions that you have to do, these are the questions that you have to write, and probably you have to go through the text repeatedly, and then you will get the basic implications that I have mentioned here. So this is the last lecture on Eliza Haywood's Philomena. Probably you have learned something from these lectures, and go through it, and I hope that you will find your positive answers from them. Okay, so up to this, thank you.